Hello and good evening to all of you. I'm going to go ahead and show you a few things about Excel. Then it's going to lead us to show you some correlation and also regression using Excel. If you notice on the top of the screen, I put the magnifier so you'll be able to see how the little detailed things will be in a bigger font. So I'll be able to understand what I'm doing when the software doesn't show the details in a larger size. One more time, I wanted to go ahead and explain to you the difference between a relative address and a absolute address. And this is an Excel issue, completely has nothing to do with the statistics as much as to understand when we lock a cell or when we let it freely move from one calculation to the next. So if I have, let's say here, name, I have James, and I have Mary, and I have Susie, and I'm going to go ahead and put some data here between 3 months. I'm using the fill handle, as you notice, in the little lower corner, and I'm going to use a random between function just to generate data between 500 and 1000. Okay, just to speed up the process. So I'm going to go ahead and select, drag this, and also drag the fill handle down. Because of the nature of the random between is constantly will change the values, as you notice if I did so any type of movement. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it and repaste it as a value, so that will kill the function and we'll leave the number as they are. So, and I'm going to paste it as a value, and I'm going to hit the escape key to also remove the marching end from the cell. So if I'm trying to explain now the difference between the relative address versus the absolute address, if I wanted to find the total for all the values, I could use either a formula such as taking the cell address plus the next cell address plus the third cell address. And this is a formula. Also, I could use the function key sum and open a parentheses and select all the needed cells, and notice it's going to be E4 through G4, and I hit the enter key, go back to the fill handle and drag it down. Let's take a very close look at what happens here. If I don't do anything but to drag the fill handle down, the range is going to change from E4 to E4 to E5 through, of course, G5, E6 through G6. This is relative address, meaning the movement in the copying of the calculation, it's going from one range to the next range or from one cell to the next cell in relation to the new calculation. This is just to make you remember that this is the origin of the word relative. What about if I wanted to go ahead and give each person and the sales that they did in the last 3 months? I'm going to make a currency here, 10%. If I want to do it at constants, no big deal. So if I say commission here for 10%, it's going to be this value multiplied by 10%, and I'm done. If I wanted to do that for everybody, 10% is going to be a relative address as well. So I'll take a look here at the fact that I'm moving from H4 to H5 to H6, and the 10% is a constant, so it doesn't move or change actually with me. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and use the 10% instead of a constant, I want to use it as a variable. So if I did here the cell F1, and I'm going to go ahead and drag it down, look what will happen here. I'm going to get all sorts of error result. The reason for this, when I moved with the fill handle to the next cell, it changed from F1, which has the 10%, then it moved to cell address F2, and there's nothing in F2, so it's going to multiply the value in H5 by the value of F2, which has nothing, that's 0, so the result became 0. In the last one, multiplying H6, which I really need to move to H6, that's correct so far, but to move to another cell which has the word may, That's going to confuse Excel, and as a result, we ended up with the error value. So what we need to do, we need to prevent the cell from moving to F2 to F3. I could take it here to, actually, I'm going to go ahead and move it to the G so I don't confuse you. For good reason, I'm moving it. As you notice here, if I take this one here to G and 1, and if I do move it down, it's going to give me the same error. It's really great if I change this to 10%, from 10% to 20%, from 2%. The dynamic aspect of it is fantastic. But what I need to do, G1 has to be prevented from moving to G2 to G3. And I have to press the F4 function, that F4, the function key F4. Okay, we have F1 through F12, F1, F2, F3, F4. That's going to surround the cell with a $sign, and as a result, you're going to treat this cell as an absolute at rest. So if I do actually hit the enter key and take the fill handle down, notice that it's going to, actually I did click it twice. Either way will work since I have a data to the left. So notice here, H4 moved to H5, but G1 stayed where it is. And the same thing, H5 moved to H6, but G1 stayed where it is. This is important for us to understand, so take your time to watch this over and over until you understand the difference between relative address and absolute address. Now, to go back to, first of all, correlation. Correlation, it's to find a relationship between two variables. Here I put some data about the number of hours that a student studies and the score that they obtain in that test. Obviously, this student studied 9 hours. He obtained 90, the score of 90. This person studied 12 hours and ended up with a lower score. This person studied 3 hours, got 64. And of course, we go all the way to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We could put a couple more here, 6, and let's say here 71. Even somebody might be actually doing 3 hours and ended up with 95. All right, so what are we going to do? The very first thing is to, we could create the model or the equation. We could do it manually first of all, then we're going to make it in the line that trend fits or trend lines. The first thing I could go ahead and do the slope. Okay, the slope tells me whether the relationship between the number of hours is a negative or a positive. So the slope is going to take, first of all, that known y, which is the score, that's that dependent variable, and the known x's, which is the independent variable, meaning the number of hours the students will study. And here we go, we got the slope in a positive, indicating that the relationship between the two is positive, meaning once the number of hours increases, the score increases as well. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of the digit to the right of the decimal points, leave myself with only 2. Okay, and the second thing I wanted to find is the intercept. The intercept. And the intercept is a function also in Excel that takes the y, okay, and it takes the x's as well. And here we go. And this is basically the intercept where the line hits the y-axis. And again, I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's very easy for me now to build the model, which is going to be y. Okay, this is the slope, 91 x plus 69.25. So this is what we did manually. Also, I could find the correlation in a function. It's called correlation, C-O-R-R-E-L, and that will give me a good, go ahead and say here, correlation, hit the tab key, and that also will ask me for array 1. Correlation doesn't, the order doesn't matter, but in the regression, as you will see later, it does matter greatly. So what we're going to go ahead and go ahead and hit enter, and there is a correlation. It's not that strong. The closer is the correlation to the 1, the better. Keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and test that in multiple ways. So also, I could go ahead and show you that we could do that graphically. It's much easier if I could go ahead and select all the data. and I could go to the insert ribbon, and I'm going to go ahead and get the scattered, and without the line, sorry, just the dotted. And notice really this, the closer it is to the rule, a straight line, the more correlated the data would be. But I'm going to go ahead and find the best line of best fit. So I'm going to click on the graph, and I'm going to go to the design, and I'm going to go to the add. Go ahead and minimize this. Add the chart elements. Notice here I'm looking for the trend line, and I want it to be a linear. And also I want it to go to the quick layout and choose number 9, number 9, in order for me to get the equation that associated with the correlation. Notice what we calculated manually is what we obtained through the chart, and it gave me the R square. This is not a full indication of the correlation. I have to take the square root for R. I could take all these pieces of data that I don't need and rename my chart here as the correlation between number of hours, studies, and scores. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to find R. R is going to be the square root of R square, and it's going to be 0.03433, and that's going to give me the same value that I obtained earlier. So we could do it one way or the other manually, or we could do it through the line, through the chart. This is good. It's not a strong correlation. Correlation, sorry, the relationship is still there. By no means this is a causation. There are probably other independent variables that cause the score to be high other than the studies, maybe the tiredness, the number of hours that the students slept that day, and could be other ways. If I change the data for whatever reason, for example, if I wanted to go ahead and get like the 12, if this person studied 12 hours, got 100. So things is going to change dynamically, as you notice, as the correlation increases. If the number of the 5 hour instead of 70, let's say at 80. And notice here that I'm making this to be in purpose to fit this study. And as you notice, if I change the 81 to, let's say, 6, the 11 here, I change it to 95. So the more I'm fitting the data in kind of linear fashion, the more the correlation is going to be. So it moved from 5.59 almost to 7.3. So in this case, it's going to make it a lot more meaningful that the more the number of hours being studied, the higher is the score. At this moment, I'm going to stop with this videos because I'm going to show you another videos that will be discussing both correlation and regression using Excel. Then later, we're going to do the same thing in a later stage with the mini tab. Thank you for watching, and look up for the second video that's coming very soon.